As we say goodbye to Generation 8 and welcome a new era in Generation 9, it's time to look back on the things that went well and the things that didn't go well in the generation. Some things have fell short, but some things have been a massive success. Before we start, I'm going to preface this by pointing out that this is my opinion. I've played Pokemon for a very long time now, and I definitely have some strong views on the series. If you disagree, that's perfectly okay. Make sure to comment down below what you feel went well and what didn't. I'm very curious to hear what everyone's opinion is. I'm going to cover 3 good points and 3 bad points of the generation. Let's get into it. Good point 1, the DLC. Okay, before I get the swords and the shields come at me, I'm going to point out that I've always had a general dislike for DLC within games. Especially any DLC that involves a storyline. We live in a world where microtransactions exist because of their easable, profitable nature. But if you don't generally want to engage with a new character outfit, or you're okay with grinding the game a lot more to be successful, that's within reason as well. Sometimes there's success blocked within a paywall. Then you don't need to engage with this in order to get the story that you want. But when it comes to a story, my belief has always been I want the story available from the beginning. If you're going to add to it, it has to be worthwhile for me to spend extra money on, and not something that was intentionally kept behind in order to obtain more money out of the consumer. I'm going to give you an example based on another game of what I believe is good DLC and what isn't. So on Mass Effect 3's original release, there was day 1 DLC called From Ashes. I believe this cost around £7 or $10 in order to buy. Now your other option was to buy the N7 edition in order to obtain this, which was significantly more money than the original game. This DLC included a completely new squad mate available for the rest of the game, and contained its own self-contained story that added. This made this character available and interactions available that you wouldn't get otherwise. To me, this is an example of a bad DLC. It was created beforehand and intentionally kept behind in order to obtain money from the consumer. Now, in the same game a year later, the Citadel DLC was released. The DLC focused on bringing back all your old squad mates from the previous 2 games in almost like a final goodbye to all the characters. You'd got to know a lot over the series, and it was a nice conclusion to the story of said characters. Now, whether or not this was intended before the game's release, I'm not entirely sure. I personally don't believe so. I generally reckon the backlash of the ending made them think of other solutions. But at minimum, it was a nice conclusion to all the characters, and this is an example of a good DLC. It adds to the story, and it doesn't feel like it's withheld in order to get more money out of the consumer. Okay, so now explanation aside, let's talk about Pokemon's DLCs. The Isle of Armor and the Crown Tundra definitely feel like a latter to me. It not only adds new areas and Pokemon such as 2 new Regis, but also 3 forms of well-beloved legendary Pokemon in the legendary birds. The DLC had a different director, and it also removed the need for a 3rd game. Sword and Shield's DLC adds to the series, and in my opinion, it feels like they're not withholding content for the benefit of obtaining more money. Is this the future of the franchise? Maybe so. A few years ago, I would have definitely been that I hate this concept, but I do feel like this could be a plus going forward. If this is going to remove the idea of a 3rd game, that saves money just from not buying that version. Game Freak in general features a lot of strict deadlines, and sometimes ideas fall through the cracks. Because of their time constraints when making a game, things might not be implemented in a particular format that they wanted, and DLC or a 3rd game would be a way of bringing these ideas to life. Should they just be given time to implement every idea they want? Yes, of course. But development in video games doesn't always work that way. Unfortunately, they have to adhere to what they are told. Bad point 1. No National Dex. Okay, and now a complete 180 to discuss the no National Dex situation. For all of us growing up, especially in the West, gotta catch 'em all is a tagline that sticks with all of us due to the anime. Generation 8 brought about the idea of Dexit, which I assure you as an English person I find absolutely hilarious. The fact that I heard the term Brexit for years and years and years and still do, equivalating everything to that is hilarious to me. Now, Dexit involved the idea of the complete removal of a National Dex. This therefore meant that you were not able to obtain every Pokemon in a new generation game. Now with Pokemon Home you can transfer things and use that, and there will eventually be support for the new generation of games months down the line. But not being able to obtain every Pokemon in a game is definitely a big source of frustration. Now, playing devil's advocate for a second, and to mention a point that I had with the DLC, Game Freak in general will be on a lot of time constraints when creating Pokemon games. Time constraints is going to be a very key thing in talking about Generation 8. They have no choice but to work within a specified time frame in order to get games out. At this point, we are now likely to pass over 1,000 Pokemon in existence for the next generation. That is a lot of programming time. Naturally, it's going to be very difficult if you're already working within a ridiculous time constraint to get every Pokemon within a game. You're also creating new Pokemon, a whole new story, a whole new region. That is a lot of work to do in such a short amount of time. But even with that, no National Dex is still a negative to the franchise. And this simply comes down to the frustration that people are going to have that their favourite Pokemon will be missed out in a new game. Similarly, certain Pokemon will always get favoritism to be included in a game. Like Charizard, for example. I completely get and understand the decision made, especially in terms of development time. But the reality is, Pokemon has a lot of ties to the phrase gotta catch 'em all, especially for older fans. And you simply can't do that in a new game. Good point 2. Innovation in difference. So when you look at the best-selling games of Pokemon, it's important to remember that it includes the sales of both games released. For example, the best-selling Pokemon game is Red, Blue and Green. Collectively between the three, they've sold over 31 million copies. There's over 14 million sold for BDSP, over 14 million for Auras, so on and so forth. Two games, however, have made it into the list that are solely on their own. Pokemon Yellow, which was released when the anime truly took off, and allowed you to have Pikachu as a star, was a big draw. But also making it onto that list is Legends Arceus. Over 12 million copies of the game had been sold by March 2022, with the game only coming out 2 months prior. That is a ridiculous pace in terms of sales. On that pace, it would outsell many main series Pokemon games. Now why, you may ask? Well, the difference in gameplay, the feel, the story, and the aim completely resonated with fans of Pokemon. There's been a massive desire for a more open world exploration of a game, and this is just a glimpse of the capabilities of what Pokemon could be. A lot of open world options, the focus of the story, but still resonating with Pokemon's core values, have made it clear that Pokemon has a massive market for a main series game outside of accessing gyms and becoming the best there was. Pokemon has a lot of spin-offs that are well liked or successful, such as Mystery Dungeon, so on and so forth. But the reality is, none have touched the commercial success of Legends Arceus. Well, except Pokemon Go, obviously, but that's its own entity. And by spin-offs, by the way, I mean ones that don't follow the normal format. It's classed as a main series game, but doesn't do the gym format situation. Generation 8 might set a new focus and idea for Pokemon games going forward in this genre. We could see more of this for certain. And if the commercial success is anything to go off, that's without a doubt. Bad point 2. Pokemon Brilliant Diamond and Shining Pearl. Okay, so I'm not going to go on for long over this point. I've already made a video on Brilliant Diamond and Shining Pearl, so make sure to check that video out if you'd like to hear a full explanation of the problems with Brilliant Diamond and Shining Pearl. Had to get a nice plug in there. But to try and keep it nice and concise as to why BDSP is a bad point for this generation, despite its commercial success, is the rushed feel of the game. This includes problems on day one and the decision not to include any elements of Platinum, no Battle Frontier or anything like that, makes the game feel a little flat. Yes, there's a few new inclusions, but the continuous upscaling of Pokemon remakes from Fire Red and Leaf Green to Auras makes the game feel a little flat in nature. It's a shame, especially considering Generation 4 is one of my favourite ones, but unfortunately it doesn't hit the mark for this generation. Good point 3, Team Yell. So in thinking of the bad guy teams, I'm sure everyone has a different opinion. Team Rocket are the original and the best bad guy team there has been. We had teams such as Team Aqua and Team Magma who, let's be honest, didn't think their plans all whole way through. Team Galactic has some very ambitious goals of recreating the entire universe, and it's a bit bonkers. N is a fantastic character and well liked, but naturally Team Plasma's true leader is detestable. I personally found Team Flare generally forgettable, and I quite like Guzma as a character for Team Skull. Also, can't forget Rainbow Rocket, which is basically the Sinister Six of bad guy teams. But I feel the best bad guy team in Pokemon since Team Rocket is Team Yell. I would class Team Yell as more anti-hero than bad guy, not being the necessary bad guy team that most expect there to be. Their focus is making one person the champion, which is the sister of their leader. Their leader is against Dynamaxing and is also the 7th gym leader in the game. This plays a further part down the line as the main villain is revealed to be the chairman of the Pokemon League, who is corrupt and plans to use Eternatus to prevent a future energy crisis. Now, as a person watching a series or playing a story, the anti-heroes are always more fun to view, even more so than a general good guy or a general bad guy. This is why characters such as Vegeta are so popular, or why Lelouch is arguably the most liked character in anime history. We are naturally drawn more to a story of characters who aren't good but aren't necessarily bad either. They can have good intentions just carried out badly sort of thing. There's a lot more story that can be told with an anti-hero team than a bad guy team or a good guy team. Should this be the standard going forward? Maybe yes, maybe no. But Team Yell for me was one of the best inclusions in Generation 8. Bad point 3, lack of accountability. Look, a common theme here has been rushing things when not ready or time constraint issues. Pokemon is the most profitable franchise in history. It's a solid $36 billion above its closest competitor, which is Disney's Mickey Mouse. And that franchise has 68 years on it. Pokemon continue to grow and rightfully so. It captures the imagination like no other, and not only continuously gets new fans on the daily, but still has many fans from its original days. But the problem this generation had in terms of bugs and problems on release dates, including Sword and Shield graphically and BDSP, will never be accounted for because of its success. Sword and Shield is the second most successful Pokemon game of all time. BDSP is 8th on the list. Legends Arceus is 14th on the list, and these numbers are just from March 2022. Legends Arceus was only 2 months removed from being released, and BDSP was a couple months before that as well. The Pokemon franchise is a juggernaut and continues to grow. Yet the amount of issues that the franchise faces in terms of bugs and problems on release date will never be accounted for and instead just be fixed in post. This isn't a problem with Game Freak and the developers. Like I said, a major focus of the bad points of this generation is time constraints. They have to work within deadlines that are set. But because the games sell incredibly well and will always be a success, there's never going to be an accountability for these problems. It's going to continue to happen, and this won't be stopped. This is a general video game issue. Rush Games will continue to have day one patches or future fixes in order to stop bugs they face because of the time constraints. And this isn't a good precedent to set, because it means you're gonna have to download to fix a problem each and every time. Let's hope this isn't something that continues to happen in future generations, but unfortunately, it remains to be seen. And that's it from me, guys, and also Generation 8. Let me know what your opinion is on this generation as a whole. Do you agree with my points, or do you feel I'm wrong? I'd love to hear. I'll definitely be providing content on the new games when they come out. Make sure to follow my Twitter, as I'll post when I'm live on Twitch. I'm excited to play the new generation and can't wait to see what it holds. Hit that like button and subscribe for future content. It really helps me out to know what everyone wants to see. Bye guys.